jewelry makers. I'm Joey Balestrieri, and today on my work table I have a really unusual, unique pendant that I created that is extremely chic and contemporary with really updated lines, and the shape is very current. So I love to watch the fashion houses and the runway shows for inspiration. I also will look at what the stylists are putting on the models to wear with the designs. And I love the artistry of the runway shows, although a lot of it is really show quality, but it doesn't work into everyday life. And, you know, I feel as I get older that I still want to keep my sense of style, and I want to be in touch with the trends in fashion, which doesn't mean you have to wear every single trend, or that you have to love every single trend, or that all of it suits your personality and your style, your personal style. So it definitely doesn't, but it's really nice to have a look at what's coming up in the next season, especially as jewelry makers, and it gives us ideas and inspiration, and then we can adjust those trends or take pieces of the trends and create our designs based on that so that we look current and up to date and, you know, keep our sense of style. So let's dive right in. I'm going to show you how I did this really unique pendant with its contemporary shape and really modern chic look. I was playing around with my check glass daisy spacers and these beautiful connectors that I have had in my stash for a couple of years. They were from the Howcraft website before they closed their e-commerce site, but other things will work for this. So I just wanted to show you that I created this really chic, really contemporary, and really interesting pendant using really simple supplies, some pieces of 20 gauge wire, some of these charm bail holders, just 2 of those, 5 of these connectors or spacers. These happen to have 3 holes, but 2 holes would work really well because I only used 2 holes in my connection of the pendant. And it does take quite a lot of the check glass daisy spacers. I think I used 75 in this one. And then I simply strung this pendant on this gorgeous metallic purple leather cord, and I put a toggle clasp, just a simple gold toggle clasp on the end with some cord ends that are glued on. So it was quite simple to do. It looks a lot more complicated as the finished piece than it was to do, but I will tell you that if you don't have the exact same supplies, that you may have to spend a little time working out your spacing, your numbers, and that adjustment will affect these negative spaces on this pendant, but it is so unique and so worth the effort. So we're going to do one together. I'll leave my little sample off to the side there. And I have pulled out some more of these check glass spacers, daisy spacers, and I'll just give you a closer look. And I'm so excited to make this one because in my supplies from Leather Cord USA, I happen to have this metallic shell pink leather that looks great with the color of these spacers. So I think that's how I am going to finish this off. But just FYI, on this selection that you make here, sorry, I was out of the camera. This selection that you make here with these bail charm holders, that space in there will allow you to have some opportunities to change up your cord. It could be leather, it could be chain, it could be some kind of a macrame cord. Really, the sky is the limit. I actually even strung on a beaded chain. It was a little bit too busy for my eye with my pendant that I created, but you do have opportunities to change this design, adapt it for yourself, and make it your own. So we're going to do one together. So I've pulled out the supplies aside from my check glass daisy spacers and some leather cord, which I won't need right away. I am also on this one, I think, going to use one of these pave gold magnetic clasps. I bought those at the Orlando Bead Show, and I just love the way they look. And I think the square is quite contemporary, and I think it will be a good match to the contemporary pendant. And I do have enough of these spacers that I got from the Halcraft website, and if you can see, they do have 3 holes, but I'm only using 2 of them. So if you have any of these connectors that have 2 holes, I think it would work as well for this design. So I also have these crystal rondelle, they're not rondelles, crystal spacer bars, and these are also 3 holes, and they're pretty much the same size, and these are quite common. So I actually had thought maybe I would do my second one with a bit more sparkle, but I really love the ones that I've had in my supplies just waiting for a design. I love the embossed, it looks architectural to me, the little embossing pattern on the front. So I think I'm going to use those a second time. And then I have a huge package of these, and I think I got them from Amazon, but these are quite common. The only thing about these is there's a little trick to connecting because of the orientation of this loop, since we would be putting our necklace through it. It's just a little unusual connection, but I'll show you what I did to make this work. But if you have these charm holders, these bail charm holders, and this loop here is going the opposite direction, you will not have to do the trick, but I'll explain that when we get to that point. So what I started with is 4 pieces of 20 gauge wire, and they are, my second pendant is they're going to be about 3 inches each. They were a little bit longer on this pendant, but I have decided that I'm going to do less of the daisy spacers on my second one and just make it a little bit more compact and not quite as long, just to see how that turns out. So these are 4 pieces of wire, and they're quite straight, and you'll have an opportunity to straighten them even further but I just made sure that all of them were nice and straight. And I'm just going to, I think they're all about the same, but I'm just going to take one and start by making the bar that goes across the top of the pendant. So I'll set those aside for a moment. And the way that I started was using my round nose pliers. I use my Xuron ones because they have this really tiny tip, and I just want to make a really small loop that's almost not there, if you will. It's really just a stopper. It's not a simple loop. It's just really a tiny stopper, if you can see how little that is. And I on my other one, I played around a little bit with the positioning of it, but it really kind of disappears once the beads are on. And I'm just warming that wire and making sure it's nice and straight. And so I think my bar across the top is going to be the same, where I do 4 daisy spacers and then a line, and then 4 daisy spacers, another line, 4 daisy spacers, and another line of beads. So I've got this started. Now I'm going to use my 1-step looper in the 3mm for this. Let me just get that on my tool caddy. So this is the one that makes the 3mm loop, and I like that particularly for this project because I need all 3 of these loops to be the same. So I'm going to do that. Just put that in the tool and make sure that my loop is centered on that wire. And I love the tool for especially this project because I know that all 3 of these loops are going to be identical, and that's going to look good for the nature of this pendant. So there's my second one and the last one. And now these are ready to be strung on to my main bar. So I am going to just clean up these loops a tiny bit, this one, and just work harden that a little bit. It won't get a lot of stress. This one's good, and this one as well, just a little work hardening. Now I'm going to start preparing the top bar of the pendant. And on this one, when I was working out my pattern, I used some clips. I used a bead bug, and I have a couple of these clamps. And I did make use of them to sort of hold things in place until I got all of my spacing right. So that may come in handy for you as well. So I'm going to start by putting 4 of my daisy spacers on my top bar. On these purple check glass ones, I had a couple that the hole was not drilled big enough to go on this 20 gauge wire. So we may run into that with those as well. And then the next thing I'm going to do is string on this next wire. But before I do, this is where the unusual trick, I don't know if you'll be able to see. Let me show you what I did on the sample. So in order for this hole to be oriented so that my leather or my chain can go through it, I needed this to be facing that way. But then if you can see, it's not in the loop on these particular pieces are not oriented in the right way to string directly onto the bar. So that's why I said if you have these where the loop is going the other way, you won't have to do this trick. So what I did and why I chose the 3mm simple loop size of the one-step looper is because I need that space. I'm going to go ahead and connect these bales to 2 of my down bars on this necklace, if that makes sense. I'm trying to explain it as clearly as I can, so let me just show you. I'm going to open this loop and just go ahead and place one of my bales right onto it. And I'm going to do the same thing with a second one because I only did 2. I suppose you could do 3 if you wanted to do the middle one as well. In fact, maybe on this one, I will change my design a little bit and maybe go ahead and do a third one. I have plenty of them, so change this design just a little bit and see what it looks like with 3 at the top, just for fun. So that all 3 will be the same. So the 3mm loop works really well. As you can see, that's on, and I still have plenty of space for my daisy spacers to be threaded on the bar. So back to the main bar. So I have 4 daisy spacers on, and now I'm going to just ignore that bale is there and string that on, and then 4 more daisy spacers. I might do better to put these right on my mat. These are quite small. It's almost like threading on seed beads. Okay, and then another one of these. And I'm doing it so that my open part of my simple loop is going to go to the back. This pendant does have a front and a back because my little connector bars have a front and a back. The back of these is open. So it does have a front and a back. Depending on what you find for a bar, you may not have a front or a back to your pendant, but mine does. And then same thing, this last one, and it going to the back, and then 4 more of my spacers. Now my first one, I did not do my final loop right away just because I was working out my pattern and my spacing, but I have already worked it out on this one, so I think I can go ahead and do my final loop. I think these are going to be pretty much the same. Yeah, it's the same size daisy spacer, so I think I'll be okay. So this is a little bit tricky. You don't want this super tight, but I do want it to be a very tiny loop. So I'm giving myself like maybe 1/8 of an inch there. And maybe I'll even go a little bit more, because you can go in and shorten that loop just a tiny bit. And I'm just going to guesstimate, not going to do any kind of a crazy measurement. And I did find that I do want my little stop loops to be going in the same direction, but I did find on my sample that it was really difficult to know where the other end is. So you can always take 2 pliers and straighten that up if you didn't quite get it. And this one, of course, is a little bit difficult because now the beads are strung on, but I got it. And yeah, they even going in the right direction, it looks like, but I do my trick with my pliers just to make sure that that bar is nice and straight, and get my other plier and just looks nice and straight. I hope this is not impairing what you can see of my project. Let me put a clean surface beneath the work. So that bit is done. So our top bar is done, and now, of course, I need these to be on the top and out of the way for the stringing. So until we get it secure, you know, those are going to kind of move around, flop around, but that's okay. It won't be in our way. So now we can start building the bottom half of the pendant. And as I said, I think I'm going to change this up. I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think I'm going to do 6 here and just shorten my ends a little bit. So let me add the 6. And I did find that it was easier to do this project with it laying on the mat. You will have to pick it up here and there, but I did find that it was easier to keep it laying down, especially when you add in the bars. So let's just see how it looks. This is the most beautiful pink, and it has a Picasso wash over it. Last one. Okay, and then I'm going to take one of my bars and go ahead and string that on at the top. And so here again, before I string it, I am ignoring the middle hole on every single one of these, just as I did. I don't know if the camera will pick that up. I don't know if you can see down, but the middle hole, I just ignored it on these, because that was a really good, it gave me a really good space between my daisy spacers, and it really gave me a pretty negative space as well. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And before I even go any further, let me pause and just show you some of the other options that I had pulled out that I think could work with this design. So if you don't have anything exactly like this, I think you could still make this design work. So I had purchased these spacers. The holes are a little bit closer together on these, but I had purchased these in Gainesville at a shop. Also in my supplies, I have some Tierra cast 2-hole spacers. I thought I had them right here in my tray. Let me see if I do. Oh, here they are. I had these Tierra cast. These are Tierra cast 3-hole spacers. These are Tierra cast 2-hole spacers. So if any of you have any of these in your supply, because I know so many of us have purchased a lot of Tierra cast to preemptively stock up before they close at the end of the year, those could work. And then I also had in my supplies these shell 2-hole spacers, and you could alternate the design, or not alternate, reverse the design, where my metal presence is the spacer on these designs, and then my extra bead is the check glass. But you could reverse it where you switch to a metal spacer and do your bar out of a different material if you have that. So you have that nice contrast. So I think all of that could work. I mean, you could take this design and work with it and modify it. So now what I want to do on my middle bar with daisy spacers is load it with spacers so that it meets right here, approximately right there. So on this one, it was 4. Since I have lowered the amount, just changing this design a little bit, it may be okay with 3, but I'm going to load on 3 and see where they land on my down part of the wire. It may still need 4. No, 3 is perfect. So I know it's a little bit far away from the camera because I said it's a little bit hard to pick it up, but let me just show you. Let me see if I can hold it upside down so that I can show you. So you see how I've created that so it has the same space there. They're meeting. And it doesn't have to be really, really tight. You know, you just want them to sit nicely against each other. And then I'm going to go ahead and take another spacer because that's going to give me the measurement that I need to load this one on. And there again, I'm ignoring that middle hole. I'm just going to feed on the 2 ends onto the 2 end spacers. And as you can see from my sample, it just creates a really geometric, interesting, alternating gold bar look all the way down the pendant. And then on this side, let's see, what did I do here? On this side, this section and this section has more. I think there were 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, no, 10. So I'm going to go down to 8 on this side and just see how that looks. But as I said, you can really have some control over this pattern, and this is the part where you have a look at this negative space that you're creating. Let me get my fingers out of the way, but this negative space that you're creating as you work your way down, you have a little bit of control whether you want to elongate it and make it more of a vertical pendant, which is kind of what I did on my purple one. On the pink one, I'm just going to try to shorten it a little bit and see how it looks. Before I close off my downward rods, I'll have a look and see. So let's see, I'm at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm just trying on this one, trying 2 less of the daisy spacers to see what that gives me. I did 10 here, so that was that was 8. Let me see what that gives me. So now I want to put 3 on this middle one because I need this middle one. If you can see where I'm going with this, I need the middle one to be filled right up to this part, and I think it's going to be 3 on this middle row. As I said, this is a little bit tricky to hold on to, and on my first one, since I was working out my pattern, I did make use of these clamps, and you may need to do that too, especially if you are working with something different or making adjustments to your quantities. And so now we can go and put our next gold bar onto this side so that we can see how many daisy spacers we need to load on the far right. And I'm just going to continue this way and build this pendant to the end, and then I'll be back and show you how we're going to close it. I have finished the entire design and it is laying on my mat completely unsecured. And so I am going to do this for you, and it's tricky because you need to hold everything into place, and you can hold the pendant upside down. Let's see, I can't quite remember how I held. I think I just held it upside down. And so here's where you do need to make sure. Maybe this clamp is going to be in my way. If I just hold it like that, it might work. But you do need to make sure that you don't have huge gaps and that everything is laying the way that you want it before you cut. So maybe what I'm going to do is do my shorter ones because they'll be a little bit easier to get away from me. So I'm going to turn it upside down and not putting a lot of pressure. I just want everything to fall the way that it will. And I'm going to just trim a little bit of this away and do that same, for lack of a better word, I'm going to call it a stop loop. And just with my tiniest round nose plier at the very tip, just do that little stop loop, and do that also. Just reposition again and make sure everything is where I want it to be. And as I said, I'm not a formal measurement on this. I am just guessing about 1/8 to 1/4 inch. I mean, if your loops were a little bit larger than mine, I think it would still look good. So, and I'll go in and clean those up a little bit. And now on this one, I'm going to show you because I started thinking while I was finishing my pattern, I started thinking about additional things I could do with this design. So I'm going to show you what I've decided to do on this one, just to change it a little bit. And so this is going to be my last stopper loop. I don't know what we actually call these. That might be a little bit too long, but on this one, I think it'll be okay, and I will show you why. I just almost want them to disappear, and if you notice, I have bent my loops toward the back of my pendant because, as I said, my pendant will have a front and a back because of the nature of my gold spacer bars. So let me just tidy up my loops here. Just make sure that everything looks good. And that is beautiful. It is ready to finish. So as I was finishing my pattern, as you can see, I did shorten. I used a little bit less of the daisy spacers for my pink one, and it still looks great. But it's to give you an idea of the way that you can change this based on the amount of supplies that you have, the colors of things that you have. But I pulled from my supplies these little hanging charms. They're bars, and I considered adding, they're really small, they're very contemporary, very minimalistic design, and I considered having some little dangles or even just one because it's very asymmetrical and very contemporary lines to this. But I decided that I am going to create one little bead. This is also from the Howcraft website before they close. It's an 8mm check, fire polished, and it's gold washed on both ends. A turbine bead or a cathedral bead, I call these. I think this is a cathedral bead. So anyway, I'm going to create one little dangle and add it to the loop on that pendant. I am going to make my own head pin by creating a really tiny, tiny spiral at the end. I want a very small hole. I'm going to clean that up a little bit. The flat side, if you can see, just want a super clean spiral. And so I'm just creating my own head pin. I just think it would look really pretty with my design to have a little extra something and add to the asymmetry of this piece and the contemporary look. Now, this spiral is going to be really small, but when I get it made, I am going to pause the camera and put this on my bench block and hammer it flat and maybe even add a little bit of texture to it with the round end of the hammer on my chasing hammer. So let me just bend this up. So I have a nice little head pin, and my bench block is literally right here beside me, but I don't want to pound in the camera, so I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take my hammer, this round side, and on my bench block, just hit it a couple of times on both sides to flatten it. And then I'm going to take, and I'm so sorry, you guys, when I'm reaching away, I forgot to plug in my microphone for this video. So I hope that you'll be able to hear everything okay. Then I think I'll try to add a little texture with this round ball head of my chasing hammer. And so anyway, I'm going to do this really fast and come back and show you what I came up with. Okay, I hope the camera's picking it up, but I just made my spiral flat and then I just added a little bit of texture to it. I kind of like the way the hammering opened it up, but if you do this and you don't care for it, you could take your pliers and close it up again, but I just think it adds to my contemporary design. So now I am simply going to thread on that turbine bead onto my handmade head pin, and I am going to do a simple loop because I don't want to create a lot of busyness on this dangle, and I need my loop to be going side to side so that it hangs in. Let me see if it even will fit. I did get out, yes, it does. I did get out a jump ring in case I wanted that, but I think I'm going to try it just without the jump ring. So let me use my small 1.5 millimeter one-step looper and just get a simple loop going on the top of this beautiful cathedral bead. And just open it and add it to the bottom of my pendant. If it doesn't move freely, I can go and adjust. Nope, it moves perfectly. Oh my gosh, I love, love, love this additional design element. I think it's so unique. And oh wow, yes, I just love this additional design element. Let me lay it on the mat so that you can see. Clean up some of my mess here. It is so pretty and so unique. So I have already started with, I'm using these glue-in cord ends for this leather, and I'm just going to put this around my neck and see my length is pretty good, but I need to take off a little bit. I just need to cut a little bit of my leather right about there. Just going to, and this little piece is enough to make earrings, so I definitely will not throw that away. I'm going to take my cutters and just create a point on the end of my leather so that it goes in my end cap more easily. So I just like to get a little bit of the glue flowing. Just a tiny bit coming out. This one's almost empty, but there is still glue in there, and just put a little bit in that end cap. It does not take much. And get my leather, just make sure it's all the way in without getting super glue on my fingers. I feel like I still have some sliding to do. There, a little twisting motion made it go down. So you just have to be patient. And now it is ready for jump rings and my magnetic clasp. I only have one jump ring out here, but let me thread it through first. I don't want to pull on the ends because the gel super glue does give you a little bit of time before it's dry. Oh, that is so pretty. I love this one. I love the addition of the check glass bead and the little homemade, handmade head pin with a spiral. So I'm going to get some jump rings and add my magnetic toggle clasp to the end, and I will take some pictures and put this up, the photographs, so you can see both of these together. This is a really fun project. Don't let it intimidate you. Dive in because it's so worth it. It's really a puzzle, sort of a puzzle piece, and it's not difficult to work out your spacing. My first one, full disclosure, did have to take these off a couple of times and readjust, and I even played with putting a bar in the middle all the way down. I didn't like the way that looked, but take this design and play with it. I hope it will be so much fun for you. It's so joyful to go into your supplies and get out things that you already have and create a design, curate your colors and create your own design. It's so rewarding. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope this was fun. I hope it sparked your creativity. And stay tuned at the end. I'll put some pictures up for you. Thanks, everybody. Ciao, jewelry makers.